So we are presenting the research title, Composite FOMO Index Conception Framework for Evolving Behavioral Financial Paradigms in Digital Economy of Society 5.0. This work was developed with my co-authors, Arav and Arush Shah. Here, our study explores how fear of missing out, or FOMO, shapes financial decision making and introduces a structured index to qualify its intensity. We will guide through our framework, methodology, and case study and showcase our contribution of this research for adaptive investment strategies. The organization of paper, it includes, and starting with the background and motivation, it follows by challenges and the opportunities, quantifying the behavioral financial dynamics. Next, we will present the FOMO index conceptual framework, and it discusses the life cycle management and how to govern the conceptual framework, and it demonstrates its impact using the AI-based investment case studies. After that, we would categorize the FOMO index into the specific preliminary evaluation criteria, and we conclude it with implementation challenges, diversifications, and direction for future research. So our work is focused on the Society 5.0. The major concern into the Society 5.0 is human-centric decision-making and cyber-physical ecosystem. They are deeply integrated in today's world. And the FOMO has emerged as a powerful behavioral driver influencing the investment activity across equities, crypto, and other types of financial assets in Society 5.0. Our contribution is to develop a composite FOMO index by means of the FOMO index conceptual framework and the lifecycle management and evolving the categorizations within that lifecycle. It provides the real-time adaptive measures. It's designed for the financial society 5.0, the ecosystem. The challenges addresses and resolved are the FOMO is fueled by transient emotions that shift within the minutes. It requires integrating cross-disciplinary data streams from psychometric, digital platform, and market. It must add up to the extreme volatility of the diversified types of assets. And those dynamics are changing in Society 5.0 because of the different types of the assets, considering the equities and the digital currencies are kind of accelerating their presence in all across the globe. Okay. The impact is huge, and the impact is because of the volatility of those digital assets. Okay. We are looking at about 120 to 150 billion because of the FOMO driven downturns and the kind of decisions that not only the individuals, but the banks and the governments are making those decisions. The advantage of our approach, there is no specific measurable kind of quantitative and qualitative uh, methods are available to identify the impact of FOMO and identify the behavioral culture and VUCA risk factors. VUCA means the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity within the dilemma of the different types of financial assets. Now we are presenting the challenges and the opportunities that comes along with it. So one of the major challenges is how do you capture those transient emotions across the investment communities, right? Because it involves the different types of the audience and then different types of perceptions and the culture. So it, as I mentioned, integrating the multidisciplinary metrics, the platform-specific biases that comes with it, specifically considering the AI, the VUCA, and the cultural variability. But there are always the opportunity associated with the challenges, right? So how do we leverage the predictive analytics in fintech, considering all of those factors, right? Then the real-time investor profiling, okay, and then the cross-culture segmentations. Finally, the risk mitigation and the systemic stability. It serves as the early warning signals for regulators and mitigate the systemic risk during the market stress events. Okay. Navigating those risks provides the insight of the overall FOMO-driven matrices. So what we have done is that we have built the specific dimensions, and within the specific dimensions, we identified component of each dimensions. There are six of them. We start with the sentiment analytics. The second one is the digital behavior patterns, psychometric profiling. The next one is the cultural adaptability. The fifth layer is the pragmatic VUCA assessment, and finally the ethical paradigms. And each of them has the specific aspect, right? And so if you look at for instance, the cultural adaptability matrix, it has the cross-culture risk perceptions. The generational adaptation curves, media consumption mapping, and linguistic symbolic interpretations. Whereas if you look at the digital behavior, what we think of it is that how you would engage the investor with the financial assets. So it's focus on more like how much they are accessing their financial assets on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's how we have identified the different dimensions and the aspect of those components along with those dimensions. So that became eventually the component, right? So the user community, it's a different types of users. It's a government users, the banking systems, the individual investors, including some of the hedge funds, right? And the data that is kind of provided for these dimensions is the user data, reference data, historical or statistical investment data, partner data, regulatory data, right? And on the other hand, we have the development of the life cycle management, and eventually the combination of this framework and the life cycle management produces the FOMO index, which is measurable entity to identify the impact of FOMO and how it would reduce the overall risk because of the FOMO. The next is sixth stage to ensure the FOMO index remains accurate and relevant. This cycle begins with baseline calibration and evolves through continuous monitoring and conceptual recalibration. The conceptual recalibration determines the FOMO index categories, right? And we have identified the initial categories, but those are not the all the categories, right? Because the categories turn into the subcategories, and then how it works is that if there are the financial assets fall into multiple categories, then we eventually will have a new category that combines the characteristic of the financial investment. And some of the primary categories we look at the reliability of the financial assets, scalability of the financial assets, sentiment, sensitivity of those financial assets. Okay, so depending on and one asset can fall into the multiple categories also, right? So that's how we have identified the initial set of the categories. And the asset classification, which ensures the adaptability, while validation and performance testing preserves the predictive accuracy in the evolving categorizations. Right. So as we go along, we give the granular categorization, and it's a continuous learning and adaptive feedback curve for us. Now, what we have done is that we have the affirmative Kaggle data for about 5 years. It started from 2020 and 2024, and we took that AI investment data from the stock exchange, mainly the U.S. stock exchange Dow. They had about 1.2 million kind of a trade based on the sentiments. And of course, it involves the different kind of equities, assets, and the different types of stock as well. So we took that data and we have walked through the each and every layer of our dimensions. So for each layer, we have identified the specific way of computing the sentiments, for instance. So we look at the based on the components, we look at the polarity, credibility, and the relevance of the first dimensions, right? Which is SEM, the sentiment analysis. The next one is the investor engagement. I was mentioning about the login frequency, and the alpha represents the coefficient. So that the alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, they are kind of combining and making the 0 to 1. So they depending on the culture, depending on the geolocations, those coefficient changes. Right. The fourth one is the cognitive and emotional predisposition for that particular category. Degree to which the FOMO triggers for category I, then the conceptual uncertainty, and that's what the we identify the volatility. So the V represents the volatility between for the assets and the benchmark of that assets based on the statistical data. Finally, the sentiment-based trading, right? Those are being equated for the ethical concerns. So T represents, for instance, is the transparency. So that's how we have constituted the composite FOMO index. So the combination of all six, or the summation, I would say, would represent the FOMO index. And this is represented and they computed here. So essentially, uh, the we have run through the actual 1.2 million and categorized into the initial the category that we have identified into our formal life cycle management phase. Right? So the result is the susceptibility, efficiency, and adaptability displayed the highest FOMO scores, specifically for AI-based investment, the data that we have received, right? 1.2 million records. Okay. What it indicates is a strong link with reactive trading and impulsive behavior, right? Whereas if you look at the transparency and reflectability, it showed the lower score. What it says, tell us, is that it's the ethical concerns are still the weaken when we look at the FOMO overall the composite FOMO index, right? It confirms that FOMO intensity is not uniform. It varies significantly across the behavioral dimensions and market categories. Right? Now, if you look at the specific score, right? How we have done is the sentiment versus the behavior, the range, right? And what we have seen is the volatility. It is the it impacts the scalability and unpredictability at very high level, right? So the impact of volatility is high on scalability and unpredictability categories of the assets. Okay. So the next one, this, of course, the framework, the life cycle, this is novel overall, right? And but it comes with the challenges, implementation challenges. So we did certain baseline assumptions in our conceptual framework and then executing through the life cycle. Okay. So these first of all, we have the baseline calibration for the new categories. So because we have to identify those overlaps and those multiple assets fall into the multiple categories, right? So we have to be cognizant about those analysis. And we look at the 1.2 million records, right? So we were running the our analytical tool on those. So we have to look at the overlapping behaviors. Now we have assumed that for because it's a 5-year data and those geopolitical environment shifts, right? But what we have assumed that, let's say, taking the current geopolitical environment and it's gradually changing, but the sudden change can impact the FOMO index. Okay. The cultural change. Ethics and governance are always evolving. So those we need to encounter, like transparency, right? Accuracy, all of those needs to be advanced as the ethics and governance evolve. So we have done it based on the current state of the ethics, right? Value chain dynamics that may change in future, and the emerging paradigms of the volatility will also change. So that these changes need to be incorporated through the coefficients of each of these equations. So coefficient is meant for that, to change it. We have identified those coefficients based on the current state, but then it would change as those dynamics change for all the six dimensions. Finally, in conclusion, the composite index provides the adaptive and multidimensional tool to quantify the investor sentiment. And it also incorporates the changing paradigms of the digital economy into Society 5.0. The framework improves overall the predictive accuracy, supports informed decision making, and assists the mitigating the systemic risk. Our case study confirmed its applicability in AI-based investment, and looking ahead, right, in a future research, we will include the multilingual and multicultural data sets, enhance real-time recalibrations, and the rearranging and more granular level of the categorization, and explore the integration of emerging paradigms, including the effect of quantum computing, decentralized finances, and these positions the index is both academically and practically impactful and scalable. Okay, and the our research is structured in inherent to the different kind of different aspect of the FOMO index, and we started with the Society 5.0 and Digital Economy Foundation. We then went into the FOMO in investment behavior. We again did the literature review before placing those components with the behavioral finance, psychometric, and cultural dimensions. Next, we identified what are the different research and the different kind of the computations available for sentiment analysis and AI-based forecasting. Next, we went into the managerial and investor sentiment lifecycle to define our lifecycle and what are the different dynamics that we need to include it. Finally, we have studied the risk, VUCA, and ethical consideration in finance to develop the framework, lifecycle, and the running the case study through those measures. Okay. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening today.